Brothers Talking is made possible with the financial support of Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Wisconsin and Metropolitan Chicago, and generous Chicagoans like you.
Hello, I am Dr. Obari Cartman. Welcome to Brothers Talking, a monthly program that will bring a cross-generational group of Black men together, creating a safe and brave space for honest and vulnerable discussion about the challenges and opportunities and fears and strengths of Black men. The goal of Brothers Talking is to amplify and explore the lived experiences of Black men, the pain, the joy, success, failure, and the resulting pathways for growth and self-discovery. Before we dive into updates on the personal goals, let me quickly reintroduce the 6 brothers taking this 10-month journey together. Jordan Sorrell, Daniel Ash, Xavier Ramey, Reggie Edwards, and Benji Junius. During our premiere episode, each of the brothers shared a personal goal that they're working towards over the next 10 months, a goal for which they will lean into the other brothers for encouragement and support. Brothers, it's time for the updates. So who wants to start? We had 5 goals. We had a month of time. Who has revolutionized their life and transformed everything and solved all the problems, or at least made a little bit of incremental growth towards something that was important to them?
I'll take that one. I think that over the past month, my goal was writing and producing the play. So I am really excited to report that I thought about it a little more.
I thought about it.
Dreamed on it a little more.
That counts.
And started having some initial discussions, but nothing tangible right now. It's the journey. Does watching more plays count, or like involving yourself in more creative art?
You ain't got to give them the layup.
I mean, I guess
TV,
it
watch
could.
TV?
Research, right?
Research.
I have seen a couple of plays, just to kind of refamiliarize myself with.
Do you have a topic? What was the topic?
I did not have a topic, but I'm still.
Are you closer to?
I mean, I'm close. I'm close, getting there. Close.
Next month we're gonna have a topic.
Next month.
That's good. Who else? Anybody make any progress? Or share some challenges about, how difficult it is to make progress on goals sometimes?
Yeah, so the goal of mine was around podcasting. So I actually put it out on Instagram. So I got a couple of leads, and then forgot one of my good friends actually has a podcast. So one of them was like, all right, I'm going to reach out to him and schedule time to do so. Second one is I just listen to podcasts all the time. So I think it's good to do that because I can start getting my mind, all right, here's what I'm hearing. Does that kind of flow with what I want to do? And if so, how do I make that happen? So I think it's good. I kind of made one step where I put it out there, found somebody, found actually 3 people, and now I can start to move forward and say, all right, here's what I want to go do next. Because I always think about 1%. If I made that 1%, then I've at least made some type of progress. Because it's not about perfection, it's about me making a step.
And that counts. The declaration in the public, right? So now the people can be like, hey, I saw that post you made. So I count that.
Yeah, for me, my goal was to do meditation every day. Has not happened.
What's your batting average?
So how many days?
I would say about maybe 2 to 3 days out the week. But what I have been doing is self check-ins with myself. Like, how do I feel? Do I really need it today? What other revenues have I done today to make sure I'm doing good? So I feel like that's good.
You start the day with like a check-in? Just like...
I start the day with a check-in, see how am I feeling, and I end the day with a check-in.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay. 2 to 3 days out of the week.
It's not bad.
I
feel like that's not bad. So, I feel like as long as I'm good and it's working, that's the most important part.
That's 2 to 3 days more than anybody else has meditated over the past couple months.
And it helps. Right?
On my end, because I don't want to go last. My goal was to, I'm working towards starting a cohort program for specifically men who are leading organizations and have declared and are interested in the work of diversity, equity, inclusion in an operational mindset. For their companies or their nonprofits. And so my goal, because it takes some time to build something like that out. This month though was tough This month was tough. I didn't make much traction on it. We had, at my company at Justice Informed, we had a lot of just internal challenges, and then also personally because it's Leo season and it's my birthday month. I don't really like my birthday too often, and I usually get I go very inside, and sometimes into a dark place, and that happened again. Oh, no. So just mentally and emotionally, I was just not ready to give anything to other people. This past month. So.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it was a happy birthday, actually. It was. Nice. It was. My tribe showed me love.
Love it. Nice. Yeah.
My goal was is to develop a charter for this new stage of life. So last month I was about to become an empty nester. I'm actually officially an empty nester. Dropped the youngest son at Howard. Nice. A couple weeks ago. So the one tangible step I've taken, which has proved to be challenging, is to find a therapist. Yeah. And I would prefer a Black therapist, a Black male therapist. And I would just say this, it's a whole other episode probably, but it's tough.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
It's very, very tough. Yeah. So I'm still on that journey to find someone that can sort of help me sort of navigate this process of building a charter, a personal charter for me as I enter this stage of life, which feels so new and it feels weird, quite frankly, odd, different. But I'm excited about it. Yeah. And I think being with you all, actually, there's an accountability thing, right? I want to be able to, as time unfolds, to be able to say to you all, here's what I've done.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But beyond that, I don't want this to just be like we checking in to make sure we did it. I want us to be able to say, what is it that we need from each other to help us along the way? So and that's asking what we need, identifying how other brothers can step in. And I'll say, we got two therapists in the room. It's hard even for us to help with that process. So you can say, I need help with finding a therapist. I don't even, I know 100 therapists, and most of them have waiting lists, right? People call me all the time. I know several Black male therapists, and people ask me every day. Yeah, same. Right? And I send them, I have like a copy and paste of a couple guys I send them to, and most of the time they say they didn't even call me back. Right? And so it's a hard thing to do. But the question of what we can do collectively to help with the individual things, I would love to go see plays with you, right? I'd love to read drafts. I mean, whatever it is that we can do, I want that to be a part of the accountability process we do.
If I can make a request.
There we go.
I need to be held accountable, right? So when I'm working, because the writing and the producing of the play, it's not a part of my everyday work. I don't make time for it, right? It's something that I would have to step outside of my routine in order to do. And so whether it's an email or a call, because when this sounds crazy, but when someone sets an expectation or has an expectation of me, I'll exceed the expectation. But if I feel like, it's just me on my own or working with whatever timeline I want, you'll see that play in 2027, and I don't want that to happen. And so, so if you can send a text or a call just to say, hey, make sure you make time for this, because for me, that is a part of taking care of myself, right? So if I haven't made time for the play or the writing or the research of that probably means I'm also not taking really good care of myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
How are y'all about text thread?
I'm not a huge fan of text.
A lot of my group texts are on Do Not Disturb.
Right out the gate.
I don't mind a text thread. I prefer my text to be blue. If you know, you know. But I prefer them to be, but I'll respond.
Yeah. No, mine are blue.
Just prefer.
As a former green texter, I have a heart for them.
Oh, okay.
So text is, I'm already couple. How do y'all keep in contact and in community with folks who you say you have a stated commitment to seeing them through and working with them and being with them on a journey? So then what is the model? Because I got too many text threads right now, and all my Facebook Messenger threads are absolutely on D&D. Instagram stuff is offline. WhatsApp, good luck. I have way too many ways that people get in contact with me, but I also think that that's part of the challenge today. It's not only hard to be alone. It's hard to be together. And technology, unfortunately, is the main way, because how much space time do y'all really spend with the people you love? Right? Like, we're always giving, as especially as men, I think. So I'm just wondering, I would love for us to actually dig in on that. Like, what we gonna, the how of it, not just the what.
Yeah. Because I don't have y'all phone numbers. We could start. It's a very simple thing. We could just.
This is so like this is such a talk. Like some of my women friends are like, how do you not know these details about your friends' lives? I don't ask. If they don't tell me nothing, I'm not gonna ask. I mean, they would tell me if they wanted me to know. I don't even know y'all's phone numbers. This is the second episode. Let's get that done though. Let's get that done.
I'm done.
I think for me, one of the things, like I had a friend who his mother died recently. So I put a reminder on my phone, like, Reggie, check on so-and-so next week. So I got the reminder. It reminded me. I sent a text. Hey, I'm checking in on you. You know, you're just in my thoughts. If you need anything, just let me know. So I have to do that kind of stuff now. I feel like it's a good and bad thing. But at least I get it done. Like, and I feel kind of bad because I'm like, all right, check. It's off my checklist. I checked with my friend. But I'm still having that dialogue with him as well. So
I think something around like calendar, because you can see it and visualize it. Because I just know for myself, my calendar is what I follow.
That's right.
Yeah, me too.
100%.
Easy. You know, I like the in person because I've done so much virtual. You know,
I'm sick of virtual.
You know, I'm just like, I want to see people in person. You know, 4K live. You know? But I also know though that all of our schedules collectively may not provide that. So it's like, how do you have some type of hybrid approach? So you're still keeping people accountable, but you can do it in a way that you kind of connecting, so it doesn't feel as like, I don't say removed, but almost like you're behind a screen or you're behind a phone or something like that. You know? Like, I'm trying to take away some of that technology, even though I work in technology. You know, it's like, how do we do that? You know.
No, I love it. I love the idea of a structure for accountability. Right, we say stuff, make goals, but like we don't have an infrastructure, we don't have a process, and you know. So I'm for it. Mine was health. I did a 21-day raw fast, and it was actually much easier. It was expensive, but it was easier to like commit to it than I.
How much did that cost?
I lost count.
It's expensive being healthy.
It's really expensive being healthy, and so I stopped doing that. But now I need to exercise. And so if y'all like got gym memberships or a routine, like I would love to just, it ain't gotta be everybody, but like I need that kind of accountability too.
Right. There's an app I use called Introvert Pro.
Okay.
And that's what I do so I set it. So I do like running 30 minutes or walking, and that's what I do. Because then it helps me keep count of. For instance, I do 12 times a month. And it helps me keep that count versus like, did I do it today or not? You know. Again, I know it's technology, but it just keeps it much more front of mind, simple.
People got the Apple Watches, count the steps. I don't want people counting my steps all the time.
I hear you.
I count myself. My app gave up on me.
Yeah.
I had a Asana Rebel, and after so many times of me not actually doing it, they just sent me a text like, it seems like you're not serious about this. You'll keep this subscription running, but when you're ready, check back with us.
Right.
But we're giving up on you until you take it seriously. It's like, okay, that's not my men's group.
Right.
At Goodwill, we transform lives through the power of work. We believe work is at the heart of human potential. Through a bold mission of connecting people to work, preparing people for life, Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Wisconsin and metropolitan Chicago is creating meaningful impact in the communities where we live, work, and serve. By eliminating barriers, we are making fulfilling work available to all so that individuals and communities can thrive. Go to goodwillsew.com to learn how to have the power to support our mission.
But let's get to the topic today. We've all heard the saying, apples don't fall far from pear trees. Malcolm X's daughter once wrote, I am my father's son, but to be my father's son means they will always come for me. They will always come for me, and I will always succumb. Each of us has an origin story that roots us, and while our origin story gives us a sense of connection, belonging, and understanding, It also holds visceral remnants of pain and trauma, fear, and sometimes failure created by those most closely connected to us. Are we ultimately destined to be 2.0 versions of our parents and grandparents and caregivers, the patterns and pains of our forebears? The journey to embracing one's origin story without allowing it to predetermine our individual identity and trajectory is a curvy, tricky one. Brothers, y'all want to talk about that?
Yeah.
So I guess the question for me at the center of it is, we are who we are in this moment, but there was always a story, right? That's one of the things I love about the therapy process is that you see people now and they fresh and they look good, but you know, you talk to them, everybody got a story, man. Everybody got something they're carrying. Everybody's got things that have happened to them, and that often Black men don't get a chance to publicly or collectively reflect on that. And so I'm just hoping we can give ourselves a moment, a bit of grace and some compassion to really go into sort of some of those things that have happened to us and how we overcome those things and how we have transformed ourselves because of them, and to do it with, you know, grace for the people that were involved too, parents or their absence and presence, our grandparents. One of the things that occurs to me is I'm looking at a bunch of Black men is that when we talk generational trauma, that includes those people that, you know, did their best to do what they could for us against opposition with their own baggage, with their own lack of examples. And so I just wanted to take a moment to see how y'all have come to where you are and to what extent where you came from informed that or got in the way of that, and maybe still, you're right, you still may be having some trouble reconciling who your parents were, who your grandparents were, who you are, and distinguishing those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. So who wants to start to share a little bit about their origin story? I consider all of us superheroes, right? So how did you become that? But were the dark times, what are some of the trials and tribulations that carved you out of the stone, right? Anybody want to take a dive at?
Yeah, I'll go first. My origin story connects very directly to my goal. Like in the last year and a half, I met both my birth mother and birth father. So I was a foster kid who was eventually adopted. And for most of my life, I really focused on everything with my adopted family, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
My parents saved my life, I like to say often. But I always intentionally ignored the first chapter. People would ask me questions like, you know, what do you know about your birth parents? And I'd say, I don't know anything and I don't want to know. Recently, when all of this was sort of revealed to me, I realized like how much not knowing was impacting me.
Yeah.
So for me, like having a blank or having no awareness of that first chapter, not understanding the why, I mean, quite frankly, not knowing who held me when I was a baby, right? When I was a newborn, particularly being a father now.
Yeah, right.
And thinking like, not knowing.
Yeah.
But so for me, it's been a wonderful, tough sort of experience to discover this. But now it's unlocking things for me, right? Like, why do I long for certain things? Why do I want to please people so much, right? Why do I always feel like I'm everything can be taken away, right? So I say this. I think about had I not sort of had this exposure to the story of my birth and that first year particularly, I don't think I would have been setting a goal that I set for myself. Because it was always just like, just do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, just put your head down, work, kind of that Midwest blue collar sort of work ethic. You work, be grateful, don't worry about that. But now the knowledge has actually almost allowed me to discover and explore myself even deeper, right? Maybe so that's where I am, like in terms of like what my origin story is, understanding it, but also in understanding it, I feel like it unlocks an opportunity for me to work on me.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's so evident how much being a father is important to you. And as you sort of talk about the meaning making of life and how to sort of find yourself in all of it, I could imagine how you said tough. When we said tough, I wondered what tough meant. But I just feel inspired just by like the possibilities of what we can do when we go there. Because you also described avoiding going there, and I wonder if it's because of anger, or if it's because of just it didn't even matter. But I'm inspired by the idea that like you go to it.
Yeah. But also being fearful, like not knowing what was behind that curtain.
Yeah.
That was the fear. And once you pull back the curtain, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
But it also opened up knowledge that that I needed to know.
Yeah.
I needed to have that knowledge. And now that I have it, I feel like there are things that kind of like make the work more tangible, more meaningful. So it's complicated, right? Yeah. It's really complicated. Yeah. I would say this too, and this goes like to being a man raised by a black men, my adoptive father. I think that generation, World War II vet, along with all my uncles who were Korea War, Vietnam, they never gave us permission to think about these things. Just be tough. Just move on.
Yeah.
And I think as I think about this next chapter of my life, right, like trying to show up as a aging black man, right, in a way that's different than
a gracefully aging black man.
Fox. But I want to be able to have like these type of conversations with my sons, 3 sons, and my oldest son is adopted, right? So I want to be able to.
Oh, you adopted first.
I adopted first, yeah. But even my subconscious, I think, was at work there in a way that I didn't even sort of think about it. But I need to make myself available for him and my other sons to have the type of conversations that we're trying to have here, right? How do you do that in a familial context, right?
Yeah. No, this is all very new. We are transforming manhood this generation. So I'm curious about other people's father experiences specifically. Like, did you have fathers that gave you space to be your full self, that said I love you, that were nurturing? I see the laughs, right? And then how do you take that, appreciate that for what it is, and develop a sense of self in a new way, but not disconnect and not be angry, but like, how y'all wrestling with y'all fathers?
So the last time we met, I said that, I've been very intentional about not being in these spaces, about not being surrounded by male identifying people. And I think for me, a lot of that was even just in growing up, I just did not like being around boys, right? Like boys made me roll my eyes. It was like just the stereotypical boy, right? A lot of rough play, a lot of calling you out of your name if you didn't like the things they liked. And I was more of I'd rather go jump double dutch, right? Kind of kid. And for me, that was me being who I was. Yeah. But as I got older, I felt like an embarrassment to my father. And I felt that because my dad is, just in our community, just well known, and people identify with him, and people give him adjectives that at the time I would not, right? And so it always felt like I was embarrassing him, or like kind of embarrassing the family name, because whenever I was
that, or was there things that he did?
There were things that he did and said that made me feel that way. There were times where I felt like he hated the way I walked, the way I talked, the way I dressed. And when my parents got divorced, I was so excited because I felt like, okay, I can be who I am because my mom loved me different, And so I felt like I could be exactly who I was. And even for holidays, I would wear one thing, it could be something like this even probably. And I would wear this, but when it was time to go to dad's side of the family, I would go upstairs and change clothes and put on something black or gray or, just something that wasn't too flashy or that didn't stand out too much. And into adulthood, when I got married, he didn't come to my wedding. And so for me, it felt like confirmation of all these feelings and all these thoughts that I had throughout the years. Now, he was present. He was present. He was a provider. And even becoming an adult, I had to learn that the more I became knowledgeable and the more I was nurtured by my mom, I felt that she, I don't know, knowingly or unknowingly, gave me the tools to understand him. Because I would say, oh, dad didn't show up or dad wasn't there. He showed up differently. And I don't doubt that he loved me, that he loves me. I think that now I'm experiencing a freedom and a relationship with him now that I never thought would be possible.
Oh, wow.
And we talk often, we visit, I go and visit him. But I sent him a text a little bit after the wedding and just kind of like let him have it, kind of, right? Like, you have to accept me, you have to accept my husband, otherwise I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And he had no idea that there was even an issue. And so to me, he worked a lot over the years, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, oh, I didn't realize that there was even an issue. So I'm walking around with all this weight, all these years, right? Like, my dad don't like me, he's embarrassed. And while he has said some things, just in his miseducation, he said some things and did some things that were not, I don't think, appropriate for a child to really experience and being who they are. He thought that I was just working a lot, right? And so, like, there was some misunderstanding there, and he's never been one to say, "I'm sorry," right? But as I've been learning his love language, I'm like, oh, he was around. He was around in a way I didn't understand because mom held me, right? Mom talked to me. Mom nurtured me. Mom empowered me to be who I am. Dad went to work. And so it felt like neglect when really he was providing. That was how he knew how to love, right? Was going to work, making sure we had everything we needed, making sure we didn't have to ask for anything. And the liberty now that I feel to have conversations with him, to sit on the same couch with him and not sweat, right? Or to not feel like I have to talk in my lowest register so that I can prove I have a deep voice, right? Or something like that. There's such a freedom there and there's such a beauty there. And I'm so excited about where we are now. But for all those years, I felt like maybe he hated me, maybe he didn't want to be associated with me. Because again, he had hopefully he doesn't watch this channel, but he had a brother who I wish I could have met, but who passed away. And I am able to identify with that brother in so many ways based off the stories I've heard. And I really wish he could be around for me to kind of get some additional insight. But there are so many secrets in my family that I know there's a reason. I know there's a story. I know that I am not the first one in my bloodline to experience some of the things I've experienced. But because things get swept under the rug, right? And we just kind of keep it moving. I don't have access to that information. But I love my dad, and we're experiencing a relationship now that I just never even thought would be possible.
That's amazing. Wow. I hear so much work you did to get there, and I hear you talking to mom and y'all developing understanding, compassion, grace, maybe even forgiveness. You didn't say that, but did he do work too? Was there any evidence that he was also reading things or talking to his own people?
I can't say if he's done any work in order to like make this relationship happen, but I had to ask myself, what's really important here? Is it important to me that my dad knows my favorite color, or is it important to me that we have a relationship, that when I have children, I'm comfortable with my children being around him, right? And I think when I got to that place, it's like, okay, I can care less about fish tanks, I can care less about cars, but those are things he loves. So I started speaking that language because to me, it's about the time we're able to spend in that. I can care less about it. But it brings him joy. And if that means that we can start to kind of build a foundation and build a relationship, even if it just means focusing on what's interesting to him, I'm okay with that right now. Because I'd rather have that than no communication at all, because I want him to like what I like. I want him to understand me. It's not about that for me. For me, it's about having a relationship. And if that's how the relationship starts, I give that permission.
That's mature as fuck. I love it. I mean, it's impressive. What about your fathers?
I wish.
Yeah.
So my dad, he grew up East St. Louis. He actually had to be foster. He was a foster as well too. They have like 9 or 10 brothers and sisters. So he went from East St. Louis to Bloomington. But my dad passed actually All-Star Weekend, February 1988, when I was 7. My dad was 35 and came home, played basketball. One night, told my mom wasn't feeling well. Next morning, my mom told me this recently. She found him on, lying unconscious. He passed away, 35 years old. So I was 7. I remember the memories. I can remember the picture. When my dad, 5 years old, went to Hawaii. My dad was very loving and very outgoing, cordial connector. So I had really good memories of my father. I only had 7 years though. I'm like 41 years old. I've had a lot of time. I haven't had a father, nor my mom never remarried either. For that time, because my mom said I was her responsibility, and I carry that. So it's tough to not have a father, and have to grow up sooner than I wanted to, because I had to have not only my dad. When I was 7, he passed. Like a year and a half later, my grandmother got breast cancer. So almost for like 4 or 5 years, I was dealing with trauma and trying to take care of people. So I that's the one thing I've always wished I had, was that relationship. Luckily though, I had good people that was around me later on, like my uncle, and I had community. That's why I went to different organizations and have even friendships that I feel is like more familiar than anything. But it's just one thing I never could have, But I've tried to show that and show up for people in a different way though, even though I didn't have those certain things in my life, So it's been one of those tougher things I've thought about as I've gotten older. I'm not sure myself I'll be a father, to be honest, but there's a way I can still be there for people that have been fatherless, either through trauma and or people just unfortunately abandoned and said, well, that's not my responsibility anymore. Because I still saw in trauma, I saw, even in my own experience, I saw love, that I took from that, because I saw that within my family. I saw that even growing through my life, if I had struggles, to then emulate that for others, even to the present day.
Wow. I resonate with both of you all. My father died when I was in 5th grade. Majority of my memories are positive memories, but I do have some negative memories that that still kind of go with me throughout my adult life. And just kind of similar to what you said, when my father died, which is kind of bad to say. I would just hear him and his brother talk sometimes in the garage or whatever the case may be. They will use words like sissy, just use words talking about other people. And I'm just like, I can't be who I am. You know what I'm saying? So I always kind of suppressed who I was, trying to make sure my father and my mother was happy with who I was. But I always wanted that father role model though. And after he died, I'm not gonna say it was a sense of like, okay, maybe I can be myself. But then my mother, she was very religious, so we just never talked about my sexuality. But growing up, like you said, I always wish I had a father figure. And I had uncles, but they lived in another state. Majority of my family members in Chicago are all women. Literally, aunts, cousins, all my friends were females. So I didn't really know what it took to be like a man. Like, what does it really take to be a man? I have no idea. I can only go off Bill Cosby and yeah, you see you see what happened with that. Yeah. So because those are the shows. I was just going off TV shows. I'm like, I really don't know what does a man look like. And to this day,
I take that back. I must stand by the image of Bill Cosby of the Huxtable.
Okay, yeah. I
think that was a strong image.
Yeah. I'll leave that conversation for a different day. I have mixed reviews in regards to that. Just with what's out there now in the media about everything that has happened, but I'll leave that conversation alone for right now. But for right now, I work in children's church. I'm a mentor to boys in elementary schools, and I just try to be a positive role model that I wanted when I was a child. Yeah. So yeah.
So this becomes the difficult question for me in the going back and looking at old stuff. You watch the Marvel movies and they go tinker with time travel and then you do something, you fuck everything else up. When y'all describe these difficult childhood experiences, and you said, like, I wish I had more time. The person that you are now, this is kind of everybody, the person that you are now, do you feel like it had to be shaped through fire? Do you feel like there was another pathway to who you are now that, maybe having to grow up older maybe gave you opportunities? Or
for me, yeah. I think I had to go through, maybe it could have been a different route.
Sure.
But what I went through made me who I am today.
Yeah.
And I found some sort of strength in what I went through. It built some sort of resiliency. If I can take crap from my cousins, my uncles, or whatever the case may be, then I can take crap from the world, because that's blood. And now I'm going out in the world, so it kind of built me to be a little bit stronger. When I was a child, I got bullied. I look back, I'm like, maybe in a way, I'm like, did I need that? Because now I'm just, I ain't gonna take no shit no more, because I have a voice now.
Yeah.
So I hate to say that I needed that, but I can see ways in which it made me stronger.
Yeah. I struggle with that idea of needing pain to be excellent. We talk about that. I feel like there's gotta be, like, 'cause I got two boys, right? And they have good lives. They're very comfortable. But you think about, like, the superstars, Tyler Perry is homeless. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's these struggle stories that seem to propel people to these heights that I'm trying to figure out as a father now. Can I love them into excellence in the same way that pain shaped other people?
I struggle with that too.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge of the question is the culture of the society we live in. We live in a society that, and that's why some of this conversation around, like, fathers, and I didn't share about mine, but it's difficult because I think the American culture specifically is one that is very much rooted in the idea of continual, to its own detriment, growth. And when growth is your only medium of currency, whether that's your participation in a community or your ability to go get a job or your validation in your education or whatever it may be, when growth is the only goal, then production is the only purpose of life. Production is the only purpose. And I think that's not only the trap, that is the cage and that is the noose that many men sit within in a very unexamined way in our society. Even the assumption that any conversation about fathers would have to include the things they didn't give us, the places they weren't at. There's an assumption that men are fundamentally, I think, negligent. And I think part of that is not just because of what men may be naturally, but I think part of it is also what we are required to be socially. We are required to be the face of production. And when we don't do that, the attack and the lack of forgiveness and the words are swift. Even the memories, going back in the memories, the question is, how did they show up for us? What did they do for us? What did they give to us? And if they didn't do that, then what was the purpose of their breath? Why were they there? Why is our name attached to theirs? I think that's part of a challenge. Look on the other side. What if the purpose of society is to just be together? That's very different from growth. to be in community as the purpose of life, that is very different from build a world and fight the travails and iron sharpens iron and, you know, make it to the, those are wildly different worlds. Those are, that's a, this latter one is a world none of us have lived in. And it's not just because we're on Earth, it's because we're here in America. And I'm not saying that as like some like ticket to get your passport stamped. I'm saying that to say that someone who travels a lot, I've learned that the way that we live and the specific traumas that we face, not only as Americans, but as men, not only as men, as Black men, is specifically situated in the context of the culture that we find ourselves in here in the US. And the challenges we face with our fathers, not only the ones that are because they were men in this world, but because they were men in America, as Baldwin would say, Black men in this world. To be in a state of rage almost all the time and to expect to show up in a healthy way for a family. How many, Korea War, Vietnam War, my dad was in Vietnam as well. You can't be a Black man in Vietnam. You're talking about before the Fair Housing Act.
Right.
When they're still supposed to produce what a white man can in America, and then we look back on them and say, why weren't they showing up? Like my grandfather fought in Korea, driving ammunition trucks onto the battlefield. One of the worst jobs you could have other than being a cook because you're Black. He didn't show up, he was drunk. Why didn't you do that? He wasn't there. For my father, I have a choice to look back at my father. I have a choice to look back at the...
He's still alive?
No, I mean, how many Black men over 70 do we know? Like, I mean, like compared to Black women over 70? Come on. Like, we don't make it. And I think that's the genesis of my desire for sympathy and empathy, not only in the historicity of our lives and how we look at the men of our past, but also because I want to live and I don't want somebody sitting around talking about me as if I'm a past tense thing and what I didn't give. Years from now, we would need to change. I am trying to change my definition of how I understand men to also understand the context of their struggle towards being one in a space of being continually undefined and undefinable. Because how can you keep a human safe when their only purpose is to produce something that they don't even know, right? Produce something, build something, break something. That's life. We can say that, or that's our choice of culture. And Black men, I think, are stuck in that. We're stuck in that in a real vicious way. You know, my dad was, you know, like my mom just shared with me a couple weeks ago, broke my heart, right? How he was a little embarrassed of me. Because how I showed up, I've always been, you know, I'm a straight dude, cis het, but the way I present, for a lot of period of my life, people thought I was gay. I wasn't. But you couldn't shake that in Black people in Lawndale. Like you couldn't shake the fear. And so for my dad, seeing that, he was like, yo, this is my son, you know. You know, and I'm not choosing sports, right? I tried T-ball, I sucked. Tried football, flag, couldn't run. Right? Ran track, got roasted. Got beat on every lap. I loved musical theater. I loved poetry. I loved chess. And everything I did, I excelled. I wasn't just on the chess team, I was the captain. I wasn't just on doing poetry, I was a national slam champion twice. I wasn't just in music.
Did he show up? Was he proud of any of it?
He didn't really show up for the stuff. No. My mom showed up for all of it. All of it. I think the musical theater was what broke him. When he saw me with the jazz. Because my brother walked in, my brother was like, you know, football, wrestling, all of that. Then I show up, you know, I'm I was 6'2", 130 pounds, like soaking wet. And I'm showing up talking about putting that, you know, my brother, I'll never forget the day. My dad, you know, my brother's, well, you know, you got to like figure out when to ask your parents for money. Like my brother needed some cleats because it's the beginning of the school year. And he's like, I got to ask Dad, I need $60 for these cleats. I needed some jazz slippers. And I was like, I mean, I might as well just, you know, bundle this on in, you know, we'll make it an even 100, right? We'll both get what we need, roll out. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. There wasn't a lot of acceptance there, but as I've gotten older as a Black man, as a straight Black man, the relentlessness within which I feel I am constantly being asked to produce for someone else has created a curiosity in me about what my father could not overcome.
Does that lead to compassion?
Absolutely, absolutely, and a strong defense.
Could you safely say he did the best he could with or do you think that he could have done more?
I think he did more than I could have imagined. Now, the more and more I know about him and his circumstances and what he was facing and fighting, you know, we have a Garfield Park Conservatory Green Line stop because of Paul Ramey. Okay. We have a Golden Dome in Garfield Park because of his work. We have, you know, tens of millions of dollars of affordable housing and property in Chicago because of my dad. When I went to work at the University of Chicago, you know, vice president's like, "Ooh, what's your last name?" And I was like, "I know that because my father was a fierce defender of community. He was a fierce defender of Black people."
But not on the West Side. You said the same thing. People were saying things about my father that I wouldn't.
And I would say that about him, absolutely, because I was there. He took me to work every day. I was there with him. That's why I do it. I mean, I have a company, Justice Informed. It is almost a mirror, a more successful mirror of a company he tried to create called Sustainable Communities and Associates. Wow. But before a Black man could ever be paid for what he thought, I can be paid for what I think. And in many ways, I feel that redeems not my family. I don't think I need to redeem my family name. It allows me to see what Paul Ramey, my father, could have been capable of had he lived in a world that was more possible for him. And I have to remember the world in which he lived. It's going back to like that when we look at the past and judge it with the future's eyes. Like I'm judging the past with the eyes of the past. And I'm saying like, yeah, my dad was embarrassed of me sometimes, and I know he was also proud. My dad was dirt poor. He never made more than $20,000 in a year. We grew up with government food. As a provider, he wasn't very successful, and we ate. You know, he wasn't a learned man. But my house was like a library. I grew up with milk crates full of books. And he made sure that I read, you know, the Dostoevskys and the H. Rap Browns at the same time, just like my mama made me. And so I look back with compassion.
Those of you that have lost your fathers, my father's gone too. Do y'all still speak to them? Do y'all still have some concept of like an ancestor connection still?
I do.
No, we do.
Yeah, my father, and this is my adopted father, dropped out of high school when he was 13 and went to fight in World War II. And, you know, I think about it when you talk about like all of the books in the house. Like I am who I am because my father had his own little library, his own this little nook in the house that was his office. And I remember he would hand me a book. So I read everything from the autobiography of Malcolm X to The Godfather, Mario Puzo, to E.E. Cummings, to Agatha Christie. Like he would hand me these books. He's a high school dropout, right? And I think about this, and the older I've gotten, there's so many men, particularly Black men, who, I mean, they're these amazingly curious sort of intellectuals, like just consuming and consuming. I find myself talking to him more now than I did when he was alive. I want to pick up on this one point about Xavier, your point about production. I just want to call in this point. I think that this we do get taught that, right? You got to be producing, right? We do get taught like that. It's that hunter mentality too, right? And I think it not only impacts like us in our standing in family and community. You got to be a provider, but even how we manage relationships or don't manage relationships, right? I've struggled with this, right, my whole life with like. Of almost like not being satisfied. So when you talk about like being able to just be in community, like just to be present, this is something I'm working on. I'm always thinking about what else. What else, I got to be doing something. I got to be acquiring something. You know, even in relationships. Like I on one hand, I show up as people would say a very reputable person, but. The parts of my life, particularly in my college, I mean, my body count was high. Because I was taught that like even in a relationship, you just keep going, right? Because it was something about okay, I'm acquiring things, right? And even if I was a nice guy, it's okay. I'm acquiring things. And so again, as I think about like how I show up in the world, I had never thought about it this way. Like how we get caught in a capitalist society, the man's role in that society,
and then add sun up to sundown trauma.
Exactly.
Crazy,
and getting comfortable with, and this is my anxiety about this next chapter of just of almost like being comfortable. When you say comfortable with community, like even become more comfortable with just quietness, right? With nature, just sort of exists. You don't have to be doing something.
I love it.
Oh man, let me know. I'll get you out in the woods. I'll get you out in the, I get out there.
Exactly.
That's gonna be our next field trip.
Yeah.
Out to the woods. Meditating nature. Yeah.
I'm Jamira Alexander, inviting you to join me for The Public Narrative, A Word, with my very special guests, David Peterson of the A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum and Melvin Thompson of Resolute Consulting Group. Join the conversation Thursday, September 21st at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Yeah. Man, I could talk about this stuff all day. I love this. This is so honest. Love honest conversations. But unfortunately, we are out of time. Once again, our time together comes and goes too quickly. But fortunately, we'll be back in this circle next month for another hour together and in conversation and in community and being together. So for those of you who are watching at home or at work from your favorite park bench, thank you for taking this journey with us. It is our hope that together we can support and encourage one another to give ourselves and each other the space and the grace to be and feel with the freedom we deserve to be and feel. The physical and emotional well-being of Black men doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves, but together we're committed to doing our part to change that. Thank you for stepping into the space with an open mind and an open heart and a commitment to creating space for brothers to talk and share and learn more about themselves and each other. Until next time, I'm Dr. Obari Cartman, and good night.